Did you step into her life with all the kindness you had? You gave her your presence, your patience, and a genuine belief that if you were warm enough, she would eventually open her heart. You saw the good in her, even the parts she herself didn't dare acknowledge. And you tried to protect that fragile goodness in every way a sincere person could. But then, as a familiar psychological pattern, she began to treat your affection as something guaranteed. Everything revolved around her emotions, while you slowly withdrew, weighing every word and every reaction just to avoid hurting someone who rarely considered how her behavior affected you. At some point, you realized that leaving was not a sign of lost love. It was an act of saving yourself from quiet, persistent erosion. When you became truly silent in a way that no longer revolved around her moods, a natural question surfaced. Does she know what she has just lost? Does your absence force her to confront herself? Or will she continue hiding behind the same old defenses? And that is exactly what we will talk about. Because when a woman with a heightened ego suddenly loses the source of attention she once relied on, her inner world does not stay calm. Layers of emotion, emptiness, confusion, denial, attempts to regain control, and finally the loneliness she fears most begin to rise one after another. And as you observe that process, you will understand the silence you created is what forces her to change, even if that change arrives far too late to save anything. And in today's video, we will dive into exactly that: how a self-absorbed woman reacts when she loses contact with you for a long period of time, and why your silence strikes the deepest part of her. And from that very moment of silence, we step into the first thing she has to confront, something most people cannot see, yet it shakes her inner world more than anything else. Stage 1. The feeling of emptiness. In this stage, what hits her first is not missing you, but the sudden emptiness inside her sense of worth. For someone who depends heavily on external responses, your absence feels like someone abruptly unplugged the power source that keeps her ego alive. Everything that once made her feel noticed, desired, or seen suddenly goes quiet in a frightening way. And when there are no compliments, no reactions, no one placing her at the center, the very first question she asks is not, "Where are you?" but rather, "Am I losing my charm? Am I not important anymore?" At this point, the insecurities she hides beneath her confident exterior begin to surface. To fill the void, she may start posting more photos, acting cheerful, showing off achievements, or sending subtle signals designed to attract attention. These behaviors are not random, they are her attempt to stuff something into the widening emptiness inside her. But the more she tries to fill it, the more she feels the hollowness. When she cannot get enough validation to balance the loss, her emotions shift into a mild state of agitation, restlessness, uneasiness, overreacting, or even creating small bits of drama just to see whether you or anyone will respond. She is not trying to cause trouble, she is reacting to the fear of being left behind. And here is what you must understand. Those sudden posts, those subtle attempts to get noticed, those seemingly meaningless signals, all of them are signs of a deeply wounded ego. Your silence is the first fracture, touching the most vulnerable part of her, the part she tries hardest to hide, even from herself. And from the very tremors your silence created, we move into a deeper emotional layer, the place where she starts confronting the very thing she has always avoided. Stage 2. Confusion and denial. The moment she realizes you are no longer responding the way you used to, her mind immediately shifts into confusion. Not because she misses you that deeply, but because your silence breaks the emotional pattern she has depended on for so long. She keeps asking herself, why is he quiet? Why is he not replying? Why is he not orbiting around my feelings anymore? Your change makes her feel out of control, and for someone with a heightened ego, losing control feels like losing safety. From confusion, her emotions easily slide into anger, irritation, or feeling offended. But what you need to remember is this: all those strong reactions hide one underlying fear, the fear of rejection. For someone who relies heavily on attention, Rejection is not just painful, it feels like a threat to their sense of existence. It makes them feel as if their worth has suddenly been dimmed. To protect herself from that fear, she enters denial. You may hear or see things like, "I don't care, there are plenty of better men, I'm fine without him." But deep inside, the emptiness from stage 1 is still tearing at her. Not because you are irreplaceable, but because your silence forces her to face a truth she never wanted to admit. She cannot control you. That is why her behavior becomes unpredictable. Sometimes she acts as if nothing is wrong. Sometimes she snaps over small things. Sometimes she blames you for changing and making her feel uncertain. In reality, all of it is her way of avoiding the fear of being abandoned. She is trapped between two opposing states, wanting your attention and wanting to appear like she doesn't need you. That is why you see contradictions, hurtful words, or sudden emotional outbursts. The important thing is this: you have done nothing wrong. You are simply creating the distance you need to protect yourself. Everything else, the reactions, the denial, the turbulence, comes from the internal battle she is not yet emotionally mature enough to face in a healthier way. And from the turbulence of the previous stage, we enter the turning point the moment she no longer wants to feel out of control and begins trying to reclaim the position she once held in your emotional world. Stage 3. Attempts to regain control. When confusion, anger, or denial no longer ease her discomfort, the next psychological mechanism switches on: the urge to regain control. Discomfort. The next psychological mechanism switches on: the urge to regain control. This is when you start seeing those subtle touches, actions not clear enough to look like she is reaching out, but deliberate enough to pull your attention if you still care. She might send a short message like, "Are you there?" Drop a random emoji, post a story that seems unrelated but carries a very obvious undertone, or suddenly ask about something she barely cared about before. The goal is not to reconnect, the goal is to test. Do you still react to her presence? If you remain silent, she will escalate, maybe by bringing up an old memory or sending a message crafted to make you feel guilty. And if guilt does not work, she might create a small conflict because for her, your anger is still better than your silence. But if none of these attempts succeed, she redirects her attention outward. Friends, co-workers, social media followers, anyone who can temporarily fill the gap your silence created. This does not mean she is over you. In fact, it means the opposite. You remain central in her emotional system, but she needs another source to temporarily soothe the void. Yet, despite the new attention, the original wound remains unchanged. No validation from others can replace the sense of influence she once believed she had over you. These substitutes are nothing more than emotional painkillers. They numb the emptiness for a few hours, only for it to return even stronger. And this is what you must understand. Her behaviors in this stage are not personal attacks. She is not trying to hurt you. She is trying to save her ego, to prove to herself that she still has power, that she is still desired, that she still matters to someone. Understanding this helps you stay grounded. You no longer get pulled into the emotional spiral she unintentionally creates. You see her behavior for what it truly is, a survival response from an ego struggling to stay upright. And from the moment her attempts to regain your attention stop working, the emotional story enters a very different chapter 1, where she no longer tries to pull you back, but instead tries to pull herself away from the feeling of failure. Stage 4. Rebuilding her narrative. When every hint, every subtle signal, and every attempt to provoke a reaction falls into silence, she is forced to activate her most essential defense mechanism, rewriting the story in her mind to protect her ego. This is a familiar form of emotional reconstruction, not meant to understand the truth, but to soften the pain. And then the familiar phrases begin to appear, sometimes aloud, sometimes whispered only in her mind. "I never needed him." "No, I'm fine. It wasn't that serious anyway." Both you and she know these words are not true. They are temporary shields to prevent her from feeling like the one who was left behind. because admitting how much you affected her would mean touching a wound she is not ready to face. This is the stage where her demeanor may shift completely, suddenly too cold, too confident, too independent, as if your silence created no cracks in her emotional world. But in reality, the moments when she appears strongest are exactly when her internal chaos is the loudest. Disappointment, self-doubt, embarrassment, and the sting of being ignored all collide inside her, forcing her to pretend she is fine just to preserve whatever pride she has left. Her outward behavior becomes contradictory. Sometimes she distances herself to the point of coldness. Other times, a moment of vulnerability slips through. Everything seems inconsistent, but in truth, she is simply switching back and forth between two instincts, wanting to protect her image and not being able to handle the pain inside. Here is what you must remember. What you see during this stage is not her true self. It is a quickly constructed mask designed to hide an emotional collapse happening underneath. Once you understand this, you stop misreading her signals, stop assuming she has moved on, and stop confusing her artificial strength with genuine healing. And from the moment she realizes she cannot bend your silence to her will, the story enters its final stage where her strongest defenses are tested, and she is forced to face what she fears the most. Stage 5. Facing loneliness while maintaining a high ego. When your silence lasts long enough that all her attempts to regain control fall flat, she must confront real loneliness. This is the hardest stage for a self-absorbed woman because it strikes directly at what she has always avoided, the feeling that no one is revolving around her anymore. Sadness, emptiness, insecurity, they all rise at the same time like a wave she has no idea how to stop. And yet, despite the chaos inside, she must maintain the mask of strength in front of the world. You will see her appear calm, composed, even confident. She may show off her work, focus more on her appearance, join new social activities, all carefully curated to send a message outward. I'm fine, I'm thriving, I don't need anyone. But beneath that surface lies an internal war few people ever see. She starts feeling the insecurity she once denied. Fear of being replaced. Fear that your silence proves she no longer has the influence she believed she had. These thoughts tear her in two. One part wants to admit she is hurting, but the larger part, driven by her ego, refuses to allow that. So she fills the void with whatever she can: work, hobbies, social media, friendships, attention from strangers. These things give her a temporary sense of being valuable. They help her believe she is still attractive, still capable, still wanted. But they are nothing more than bandages over a deep wound, soothing for a moment, never healing. The truth is, she has not moved on from you. She simply refuses to let herself acknowledge it. Holding her ego high is the only way she knows to avoid facing the real pain underneath. Understanding this stage allows you to see the situation clearly. You stop being fooled by her polished confidence or her sudden success. The surface is pride rebuilt and reinforced, but beneath it is a loneliness so heavy that even she cannot bring herself to look at it. And from the contradictions and inner battles she faced in stage 5, we arrive at the final point of this entire journey, a point that is no longer about her, but about you. When you look back at everything that has unfolded from her emptiness, confusion, denial, attempts to regain control, and finally the confident mask covering her loneliness, you begin to see something clearly. Every reaction she had was rooted in her own internal conflict, not in your worth. And recognizing this is the first step toward freeing yourself from guilt, responsibility, or the lingering confusion she may have left behind. You are not born to be someone's healer. You are not obligated to carry the emotional voids people create for themselves, and you certainly do not have to sacrifice your peace to maintain a connection that slowly drains you. You know this already. That is why you stepped back, not out of weakness, but out of maturity. You understood that love is not self-destruction. Your silence was not a punishment. It was a quiet reminder that you too are human with boundaries, limits, and a heart that deserves respect. And by stepping back, By no longer revolving around her emotions, you gave yourself something precious, the space to breathe, to reflect, and to heal. Understanding her emotional journey is not an invitation to return and fix anything. It is simply a way for you to see that someone else's pain does not define your worth. You did not fail. You are not inadequate. You are not enough. You are simply not responsible for filling the void of someone who is not ready to face their own truth. And sometimes, the greatest victory is not holding on to someone but holding on to yourself, holding on to your peace, your boundaries, your self-respect, and reclaiming the parts of your heart you once lost while trying to keep someone else whole. Remember this, you are stronger than you think. You had the courage to step away from a cycle of emotional exhaustion. That is a sign of growth, not surrender. You deserve a healthy kind of love, one where your feelings are valued, your efforts are acknowledged, and your peace is not the cost of connection. Therefore, my advice for you is to put yourself first. Learn to listen to your own emotional needs, set clear boundaries, and never feel guilty for protecting your heart. The right person will never demand that you exhaust yourself just to be loved. And if you are on the journey of reclaiming your peace, slow down, take a deep breath, and trust that you can absolutely build a gentle, fulfilling life that is no longer pulled into anyone else's emotional storms.